information outside of things like call, like drugs, because we've discovered the beauty of herbs and plants, the properties of plants that aren't manipulated by wanting control through chemical research. Anyways, that's a whole different tape. Anyways, she just brought home Flavonex. Flavonex was recommended to both of us by a doctor that she found, who was a former doctor that opened up an herbal store. His story is that he had Crohn's disease. While he was studying medicine, he had Crohn's disease his whole life, and it was to the point where it's really bad. If you know the progression or the progression of Crohn's, you'll know how much this means to have the knowledge he has from the illness. Anyways, he was studying to be an MD and was on a magnitude of different pills. And when he was studying that, he started looking into the medical books and found out that, drugs are usually made synthetically. They try to copy the compounds of naturally occurring things, and they create them synthetically, so that way they can patent it and then profit from it. The problem is, though, is when you get synthetic drugs that are chemically manipulated, it can cause more problems, which is exactly what happens in Crohn's patients, people or any patients that are on these huge protocols of drugs. And he started finding that a lot, at first he found that a lot of the antibiotics, or not antibiotics, but a lot of the drugs that he was on could be completely replaced simply by certain herbs that are on the market. So he started one by one until he, as far as I get the story correct, he was able to replace every single one on the list. And then he was able, did he cure himself? And then yeah. 7 medications. All food and herbs. And then he's done now, though, isn't he?
Right.
He's cured, right?
Right. He does not have Crohn's.
Okay, he does not have Crohn's as of today. So he turned around and said, screw being an MD under the current practices that MDs are relying on, which are corrupt. Anyways, and so he opened up a herbal store, and we went to him when we were way in the beginning, trying to figure out what in the heck was going on with me. And the one thing, he tried to help us, and we were being led through the dark. I mean, it's like a puzzle that you're lucky if you get through it. Or back in the day before Limes was so all over the internet, you were lucky to get through. It took me 5 years. 8 years in total. But anyways, one thing he suggested was Flavonex. And Flavonex is an anti-inflammatory. And I realized the potency of it back when I was having these inflammation flare-ups from my disease when it was unrecognized, undiagnosed, untreated. And this Flavonex used to do a pretty good job of battling it. Now, at that time, my inflammation was so severe that I don't see anything, even drug-wise, that could really keep it under check. But it did help me tremendously, and I think a lot of these solutions that we came across throughout the history of my progression is what really saved my life in the long run, and gave me abilities to do things like work a job and not be in a wheelchair, because I know I had a really bad case of Lyme. Well, I do now still, but we're working on it. This is the last call. So anyways, I wanted to bring that up because my mom just said she just went out and bought Flavonex again, and it's almost like bringing back the old discoveries from the beginning that were the true ones that really helped. So I'm going to take one right now. Let's see. Let me read a little bit about it. Flavonex, salvia, and ginkgo extract herbal supplement. You take 2 tablets. It's made of purpuric root, ilex root. Oh, okay, so it's Eastern herbs, and you have to have a doctorate's degree to buy it from this company. So there are a lot of herbal, I've researched that too, there are a lot of herbal remedies on the market that take their job very seriously, because it is a treatment, whether or not Western medicine wants to catch up to it. It's a drug but not synthetic. So it helps address the body's problems, and if it's researched by a credible company, like one like this, which is Health Concerns, then you run less of a risk of any kind of side effects or harm to the body than you would run a risk of these chemically BS ones that have been pushed out on the market. Yeah. The last thing I wanted to address about the whole herbal thing is, yes, you have to be careful with this. Yes, you have to be talking to someone that's credible, that is an MD, that does practice this, that does know right from wrong, that does have a history and a track record of treating people. And for so long, I've had people tell me I'm crazy. But I want you to think about this very rationally. Big Pharma has been in bed with our government for a long time. And laws have been passed in their favor, and people have been kept quiet from this stuff for a very specific reason, and that is because God knows when they would decide that enough was enough with them pushing out chemical drugs instead of coming up with solutions for illness. And the more and more that you get out there and you research people that are credible in this field, and you know who you're talking to, and you know the companies behind it, and you use common sense, you're going to soon see what solutions we do have in healthcare. And if I were you, anyone, doesn't matter if you're sick or not, I would play this tape to your insurance company, because your insurance company sure as heck would appreciate knowing that they would have a heck of an easier time covering you if all of us were healthy and if there were solutions in illness rather than this ongoing madness.